In the spring of 1963, Reno, Nevada, was still a town known for its tranquility. While it had gained some fame as the world's wedding capital, Reno remained far removed from the noise of big cities, surrounded by majestic mountains. The local residents mostly led simple and peaceful lives, knowing each other well, and serious crimes were rare. In this place, people were used to the warm sun during the day and the quiet calm at night. Violence seemed completely out of place in such a peaceful community. However, this calm was about to be shattered. Sonja McCaskie, born in Austria, was an exceptional skier. She had represented Austria in the 1956 Winter Olympics, and with big dreams, she left Europe and moved to the United States, hoping to build a new path for her skiing career. But Sonja was not only an athlete, she was also a young mother. With her son by her side, she settled in Reno, hoping to create a stable home for both of them. As a single mother, Sonja's life was busy yet seemingly peaceful. She lived with her son in a modest apartment, away from the chaos of the outside world, focusing on raising her child and continuing her athletic journey. She got along well with her neighbors, always friendly and kind, yet her life remained largely unremarkable. However, beneath this facade of normalcy, a tragedy was quietly brewing, one that would soon shake the entire community. It was an ordinary morning, and the calm of Reno seemed to pervade everything. But this peace was about to be violently shattered. Sonja McCaskie's neighbor, William, a young student, was getting ready to leave for school when he noticed that McCaskie's apartment door was slightly ajar. Out of curiosity and concern, he gently pushed it open. The door creaked as it swung inward, but instead of being greeted by Sonja's usual smile, he was met with a gruesome scene that he would never forget. As William stepped into the apartment, a chilling unease filled the air, and an eerie silence enveloped the room. Scanning the surroundings, he saw scattered belongings on the floor, suggesting a struggle had taken place. He continued walking inside, and then his eyes fell upon McCaskie's lifeless body. She had been brutally murdered, her body viciously assaulted and twisted unnaturally on the floor. Blood stained the room, covering every corner. Her head had been severely damaged, to the point where she was almost unrecognizable. Stunned by the horrifying sight, William stood frozen in shock. His breathing became shallow, his heart pounding violently, as if all the blood in his veins had turned to ice. Trembling, he stumbled backward, nearly collapsing, before dashing out of the apartment in terror to call the police. When the officers arrived at the scene, the oppressive atmosphere still lingered. Everything in the apartment seemed frozen in time. Each step the officers took echoed with ominous intensity, the blood on the floor still wet, the air heavy with the stench of death. As they cautiously surveyed the scene, they realized the disturbing reality before them. Sonja McCaskie's death wasn't just a murder, it was a frenzied outburst of violence. Her neck had been strangled, and her body had suffered multiple traumatic injuries. It was clear that the killer had not just sought to end her life, but had unleashed a far more twisted, violent rage upon her. According to the initial autopsy report, Sonja's death had been extremely painful. She had clearly endured a prolonged struggle, desperately trying to escape her attacker, but ultimately unable to fend off the assault. The report revealed that not only had she been beaten, but a rope had also been used to strangle her, cutting off her air until she suffocated. The level of brutality and violence involved in this murder was beyond what anyone could have imagined, leaving even the police officers at the scene shocked and angered by the viciousness of the crime. What was once a warm and safe haven for McCaskie and her son had now turned into a blood-soaked nightmare. The police, standing in the midst of this gruesome scene, were weighed down by the gravity of the crime and the profound sadness it left behind. They knew this was not a random act of violence, but a calculated, hate-filled killing. The entire community was soon engulfed in shock. Neighbors who had once lived peaceful, friendly lives could not believe that their serene existence had been shattered by this heinous murder. Behind the murder of Sonja McCaskie lies a shocking truth. The perpetrator was not a seasoned criminal or a hardened killer, but a 17-year-old boy, David Meirhofer. David Meirhofer came from an ordinary American family, and his childhood appeared uneventful. As a child, he hadn't experienced any significant turmoil. At school, Meirhofer didn't stand out. He was an average student, quiet and introverted. He lived a life typical of many high school students, attending classes by day, going home afterward, and occasionally spending time with friends. His background made it hard to connect him with such a brutal murder. Yet beneath this calm exterior, there lurked a dangerous side. Despite being a minor, the severity of the crime he committed starkly contrasted with his young age. At 17, an age typically associated with carefree optimism, David Meirhofer's mind seemed to have already been consumed by darkness. After the murder, the police launched an immediate investigation. Through the clues left at the crime scene, they gradually began to focus their attention on Meirhofer. First, fingerprints and shoe prints found at the scene matched his, and witness accounts from neighbors further pointed to this seemingly ordinary teenager. Some witnesses recalled seeing a young man resembling Meirhofer loitering near McCaskie's apartment around the time of the crime, which raised the police's suspicions. As the investigation progressed, the authorities gathered more evidence. After several days of tracking and compiling proof, they identified Meirhofer as the prime suspect and proceeded to arrest him. When the police arrived at Meirhofer's home and questioned him, he remained eerily calm. His composure surprised the officers. A 17-year-old boy, expected to crack under fear or panic, showed no signs of distress. It was as if he had foreseen this moment and was fully prepared for it. After his arrest, Meirhofer displayed little remorse. His indifferent attitude sent chills down the spines of the investigating officers. For such a young high school student, no one had anticipated that he could commit such a horrific crime. This once unnoticed boy had now become the embodiment of evil in the public's eyes, leaving the entire community gripped with fear and disbelief. The murder of Sonja McCaskie not only shocked the entire community, but also horrified people with its gruesome violence and cruelty. David Meirhofer, the perpetrator, was only 17 years old, but the crime he committed made it hard to reconcile his age with the brutality of his actions. As the details of the case gradually came to light, the police pieced together the horrifying events of that night through evidence from the scene and the coroner's report. According to police speculation, McCaskie was attacked in her own home. Meirhofer broke into her apartment that night with clear intent. Once inside, he quickly overpowered McCaskie and began assaulting her. She did not submit easily, attempting to struggle and escape her attacker. However, her strength paled in comparison to this young but savage criminal. McCaskie's struggle was agonizing. The autopsy report indicated that she endured extreme pain and terror in her final moments. Meirhofer brutally beat her, leaving severe injuries on her head, face, and body. Her head suffered heavy blows, which likely caused her to lose consciousness, but the nightmare didn't end there. Instead of stopping, Meirhofer grew more frenzied. He found a rope and used it to strangle her, tightening it around her neck until she suffocated. The autopsy revealed clear ligature marks around McCaskie's neck, which was the direct cause of her death. The rope had been tightened so severely that it cut off her airflow for several minutes, during which she was left helpless, unable to breathe, struggling in vain until her final moments. This entire process was torturous, showing the extreme cruelty of the perpetrator. The police were both enraged and perplexed by this. Meirhofer hadn't simply intended to kill. It seemed he found some twisted satisfaction in the process. According to police records, he remained remarkably calm at the crime scene, even going so far as to clean up parts of it. His composed behavior was hard to believe for someone only 17 years old. It was clear that he had full control over his actions, and he appeared to have a disturbing fascination with violence. The forensic report also revealed that McCaskie bore signs of struggle all over her body, particularly on her fingers and arms, indicating that she had desperately tried to break free from the rope. However, her resistance ultimately proved futile. This fight for her life was profoundly unfair. She was up against an assailant driven by malice and violent tendencies. What made the situation even more disturbing was Meirhofer's cold, unfeeling nature during the crime. Throughout the attack, he showed no mercy or hesitation. Witnesses later recalled that his demeanor after the arrest was chilling. He remained emotionless, responding to police questions with eerie calmness, almost disdainful. One investigator described him during the interrogation as nothing like a normal kid. His coldness gave me chills. During his interrogation, Meirhofer confessed to the crime without showing any sign of remorse. Further investigation by the police suggested that he may have planned the murder well in advance, even preparing for it beforehand. This theory made the crime even more terrifying because it indicated that Meirhofer's actions were not impulsive but premeditated. He had seemingly decided long before to take McCaskie's life and enjoyed every step of the process. Blood patterns found at the scene led forensic experts to conclude that McCaskie had attempted to flee toward the door but was intercepted by Meirhofer and dragged back inside. Her despair and helplessness must have peaked at that moment, while Meirhofer's cold-bloodedness was on full display. He wasn't simply trying to kill her. He was intent on completely destroying her life and dignity. Every detail of this case was heartbreaking, and Meirhofer's cruelty exceeded all expectations. Despite being a minor, he harbored immense darkness and malice. When summarizing the case, the police admitted that they had never encountered such a young perpetrator with such a strong propensity for violence. This murder was not only a brutal end to Sonja McCaskie's life, but also a profound shock to the entire community. The trial of the murder case of Sonja McCaskie unfolded like a prolonged psychological battle, with David Meirhofer taking the stand to face the horrific crimes he had committed. The atmosphere in the courtroom was heavy and tense, filled with concerned citizens and media eager to witness the delivery of justice. In court, Meirhofer's demeanor was perplexing. He appeared calm and expressionless, starkly contrasting with the brutal nature of his crimes. The prosecution began by outlining the background of the case, gradually introducing the details of McCaskie's life and a tragic death, aiming to evoke sympathy and anger from the jury. They meticulously presented evidence, particularly forensic evidence and psychological analysis reports, which revealed the gruesome nature of Meirhofer's actions. The prosecution's forensic expert provided crucial evidence, meticulously interpreting the autopsy report and characteristics of the violent acts. The expert showcased the injuries on McCaskie's body, emphasizing that she had endured multiple violent assaults before her death, highlighting the suffocation she suffered. This information shocked those in attendance and made the jury acutely aware of the brutality involved in the murder. Additionally, the psychological analysis report was submitted, analyzing Meirhofer's mental state and behavior patterns, revealing his pathological tendencies toward violence. In response to the prosecution's compelling evidence, Meirhofer's defense attorney employed a different strategy. They argued that Meirhofer, being only 17 years old, was still a minor, whose psychological development was not fully mature. They suggested that he did not fully comprehend the consequences of his actions at the time of the crime. The defense sought to portray him as a victim of circumstances, arguing that he had experienced significant psychological trauma during his upbringing, which led to his inability to control his actions in extreme situations. This defense strategy sparked controversy in the courtroom, and the jury found themselves divided in their opinions. As the trial progressed, public interest intensified. Media coverage documented every detail of the proceedings, with live broadcasts allowing viewers across the country to witness the events unfold. Each time the prosecution presented new evidence or witnesses took the stand, crowds of protesters gathered outside the courthouse, demanding justice and accountability. After a lengthy deliberation, the jury finally reached a verdict. The ruling regarding Meirhofer provoked widespread discussion within the community. When the judge announced that Meirhofer would be sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, some in the audience felt a sense of solace. While they could not bring McCaskie back, this verdict at least provided some comfort to her friends and the entire community. At that moment, the community's emotions began to ease, with many expressing that, although the law could not restore a lost life, it had ensured that the perpetrator received the punishment he deserved. Friends and family of McCaskie wept outside the courtroom. Although the pain remained, a flicker of hope ignited within them, believing that justice had ultimately prevailed. The trial was not just a reckoning for McCaskie's life. It also demonstrated the strength of unity and resilience within the residents of Reno. Despite the shadow of violence still looming over the town, the people believed that the arrival of justice would bring a glimmer of light to their future. The murder of Sonja McCaskie not only elicited a strong response in Reno, but also gradually extended its impact to broader societal levels. Following the conclusion of the case, the public began to pay more attention to women's safety issues, particularly the risks women face in domestic and community environments. Many women's organizations and community groups united to launch campaigns addressing domestic and gender violence, urging greater awareness of this serious social problem. They organized lectures, workshops, and community meetings aimed at raising public awareness and providing women with strategies for personal safety. This case sparked deeper reflections on the various threats women encounter in their daily lives. Media coverage frequently discussed women's safety issues alongside the case, promoting open dialogue about gender-based violence. On social media, many women shared their stories, calling for societal attention and change. This conversation extended beyond Reno, even becoming part of a larger movement nationwide, prompting a reevaluation of the legal system's effectiveness in protecting women's rights. Additionally, the McCaskie case triggered an in-depth examination of juvenile crime psychology. Psychologists and sociologists began to reassess the roots of youth criminal behavior, exploring the psychological state of juvenile offenders and the contributing factors. The unique nature of this case, with 17-year-old Meirhofer committing such an extraordinarily violent act, spurred discussions about adolescent psychological development in the context of crime. Experts began focusing on youth who might face mental health issues, advocating for enhanced psychological counseling and intervention. Debates regarding the legal handling of juvenile offenders also emerged. Various sectors of society began to question whether existing laws were adequate for addressing youth crime, especially in cases of violent offenses. The defense strategy in this case highlighted Meirhofer's status as a minor, arguing that he lacked full awareness of the consequences of his actions during the crime. This defense sparked vigorous discussions among legal experts, with many calling for a more flexible and humane approach to juvenile legal handling rather than solely pursuing harsh punishment. Some advocated for alternatives to incarceration, such as increased psychological counseling and educational opportunities, to help juveniles reintegrate into society successfully. As time passed, the McCaskie case became a significant example in discussions about women's safety and juvenile crime. It reminded people that violence is not just an individual act, but a complex issue involving social, cultural, and psychological dimensions. This case not only heightened public vigilance regarding violent crime, but also spurred changes in related laws and policies, aiming to create a safer societal environment. Although Sonja McCaskie's life cannot be restored, her story and the aftermath of the case inspire countless individuals to continue moving forward. Society progresses through reflection and change, striving to protect more women from harm through legislative and educational measures and helping more young people avoid crime, thereby creating a safer environment for the future. 50 years later, looking back at the murder case of Sonja McCaskie, this event is still regarded as one of the most terrifying cases in American history. Time has not diminished the shadow of this event. Rather, it has made its weight even heavier in the hearts of many. This murder was not just a crime, it was a brutal theft of a young life, stirring deep emotions in countless individuals. McCaskie's dreams and hopes, once vibrant, were extinguished in the face of violence, leaving behind an enduring sense of regret. The societal repercussions of this case continue to influence people's awareness of women's safety and juvenile crime issues. While laws and social policies have progressed, we still face the harsh realities of violence and injustice. As people pursue justice, they also realize that every lost life carries the pain of family and the responsibility of society. Many witnesses and bystanders still feel a chill when reflecting on the past, overwhelmed by a sense of fear and helplessness. In this history, we must not only remember McCaskie's name, but also reflect on the trauma that violence inflicts on society. Though time has taken many things away, the yearning for justice and the appreciation for life remain indelibly imprinted in every heart. This case has become a shared memory, reminding us to cherish the present and face the future with courage.